Okay, hello everyone. This is Priest or Cyber Priest, as you might know me in YouTube. So, time to do another video write-up after a very long time of absence from doing write-ups. But today we're not going to play something from Hack the Box or Try Hack Me. Instead, we are going to explore VanLab. Okay, it's a platform that hosts various vulnerable machines. It's created by XCT, this guy right here. If you're active in Hack the Box, you'll definitely know that he is number one or number two. And he has created quite a few boxes for Hack the Box, and now he hosts his content in this platform. It's really worth exploring. Okay, it has various access options here. So the the labs consists of standalone machines, Active Directory chains, which we're going to play today. It also has two red team labs, which are like the Hack the Box Pro Labs or Try Hack Me networks. So it consists of various machines that build a whole corporate Active Directory environment, and you get to do a full security assessment of a network, exploring various antivirus evasion techniques and various Active Directory exploitation and some web apps as well. So today we are going to play one of the Active Directory chains. So what are chains? It's what you see in the current OSCP Active Directory version. It's a mini network consisting of 2 to 3 machines, okay, that actually comprise a small network. Although you can find quite a lot Active Directory standalone machines, they're not very realistic because as I've said in other videos, it's just one machine and everything is pretty much in there. Okay, so in the same machine you will find maybe a web server hosting a vulnerable web application to get the initial foothold, and then the domain controller itself. Now, when you want to practice Active Directory, it's better to have a chain. It's better to have 2, 3, or 4 machines because it gives you a better picture of lateral movement and exploiting various machines on your way to the domain controller. So right here we have 2 to 3 machines. The chains, there are some of easy and some others of medium difficulty. We can see that there is a new one, Intercept, which is rated hard, which would be interesting to play later on. I've completed the first 4. They're all very interesting. They explore various aspects of Active Directory misconfigurations and abuses, and I highly recommend them if you're interested in Active Directory and you want a mini environment to play. So today we're going to play Trusted. It's an easy rated Active Directory chain. Now all interactions for machines are being done through the VanLab Discord server. I've already launched this chain. It consists of 2 machines. I have the IPs right here. Okay, so we are going to actually try and hack this chain, which means that we have to reach domain administrator privileges. So I've already launched my VPN. Let's go and start scanning the network. Now, in some of the chains you will be already inside the internal network, but in some other chains you will have to exploit a web application. So some chains, you know, simulate the external face as well, but some others just throw you inside the internal network where you have to perform various attacks. So the first thing that we should do is, you know, maybe try and do a scan of our IP addresses. Okay, I'm going to do a full port scan of these two IP addresses and see what ports I can find, you know, to get an idea of what I might be facing right here. Okay, so we can already see some interesting ports. For example, we can see 53 here, which is the DNS port. We can see LDAP ports, LDAP secure port. Okay, so these are the ports that are open for us in those two IP addresses. Okay, so you can see that they have very similar ports running, and they are ports that host services that usually run on domain controllers. Okay, you can see we have LDAP, we have Kerberos, we have DNS here, we have Windows remote management here. So we can actually see that we have two domain controllers. Okay, this might sound strange, but if you're, you know, into Active Directory, you might have already guessed by the name of this chain, since it's trusted, that it has something to do with cross-domain trust abuses. So most probably we'll have two domains, maybe one is a child domain and the other is the parent domain. I don't know which is which right now. So we'll have to compromise the first domain that we can get, and then we'll have to exploit a trust relationship between them so that we can escalate privileges. So without further ado, let's run a more comprehensive scan. Let's save the results to this file. Okay, now this scan might take long. Now what is interesting here is that in one of the domain controllers we have the HTTP service probably running here. So we might have a web server right here, okay, which is definitely worth exploring right now, because we don't have any other information. Of course, we could try to enumerate you know, SMB shares, and we're going to do exactly that. We could try to enumerate LDAP as an anonymous user. We could try to enumerate SMB as an anonymous user. But as we run this full scan for service versions and the basic scripts, we should probably take a look here and see if something is hosted in here. So I'm going to launch the full scan. It might take a while, and at the same time I'm going to do really basic, okay, basic scan of this IP address with WhatWeb, so we can see if something is hosted in there. And we can see that we have a valid hit here. Okay, we have XAMPP right here. So we go and launch Firefox. We can see that we have landed in an XAMPP installation. Okay, now what is XAMPP? XAMPP is a full solution. It's actually the X operating system. It's Microsoft. We could see also LAMP, which is Linux. Okay, it's Apache, MariaDB, PHP, and Perl. So it's actually a server that allows us to test our websites, build our code in there. It combines all those nice things: database, a web server, and two backend languages to create PHP applications with database, with various interesting stuff. We can see that we have easy integration for WordPress, Joomla, Moodle. It's a very common system that you will find. Okay, so it's worth being familiar with it. So most probably something is going on here. Okay, someone is maybe trying to build a website or test a website. We go to PHP MyAdmin. We can see that we get a forbidden error here. We can see the PHP version, which might have some interesting information here. It's quite a long file that we can get some interesting system information. For example, we can see what system it's built to, the compiler. We can see the configuration file right here. There are some interesting stuff. And there are also frequently asked questions, guides. In the applications, we don't have anything. But we can definitely see that something is going on here. So what we're going to do right here is try and see if there are any directories that we could access here. Okay, so let's define our IP address here, and now let's go and see our word list. I like to use this one in the CDF scenarios and in practice environments. It usually works. Okay, yeah, I haven't defined the URL. We need the -u flag here. You can see that it finds an image directory, and we can see that we have an interesting dev directory here. Okay, so something might be in development, and we go here and place dev. Voila, we have something very interesting here. Okay, something very interesting. So we have a website that's probably under development. Okay, it's for a law firm, and if we take a look here, we can see an interesting note which is placed on the latest news. So yes, this is a website under development. It says, Eric, please take a look at this. If you have time, I tried to implement some PHP code and set the database connection, but it doesn't seem to work. Okay, so here there's a database connection, which is interesting, and we have a username as well, Eric. Okay, usernames are important, especially in Active Directory environment. So Eric is probably a system administrator, a developer. He might be a privileged user, so we have to keep our eyes on him. Now, Right here we have this website. It's worth exploring it a bit. Okay, see if there's anything in about. Nothing. Contact form. We could try to pen test the contact form. See if we could get some sort of probably injection. What's also interesting here is this. Okay, we can see the domain right here. It's trusted.vl. So that's a really cool information that we could get from the contact info page. So we could probably find the email convention here, which corresponds to the Active Directory naming convention. For example, if we could see here Marcus.Turner or M.Turner, then probably it would be a very good hint of what the naming convention is, and we could actually realize how we should form possible email addresses once we found more usernames. For example, there could be another page saying staff and list the staff and its positions. Now, what's interesting here, and we should notice it, the first thing is that something interesting is going on here at the URL. As you can see, we have this view which calls the index.html. If we go to about, it calls the about.html. We go to contact. Okay, we have this contact.html. So this could be a very nice place for maybe SQL injections, or this could be a great place for local file inclusion. Okay, so it calls the file directly. So what if we try and call another file? So here what we have to be aware of is that we have a Windows server. Okay, now since many websites are being hosted in Linux servers, the most common way to test for LFI would be to say something like, I don't know, this Etsy password. Okay, of course this fails because, as you can see here, we are at Windows, so we have to find something else. Okay, so let's try and see where the Windows hosts file is. Okay, so you find the host file location, maybe we could call it. Okay, so we can see that we have this right here, this path. So let's try to call it. Okay, so it's in C, Windows, System 32. And yes, interestingly enough, it calls this file. Okay, it's a valid file. So right now, this is the default Etsy host file, but it's the Windows versions, of course. So we have confirmed that we have local file inclusion here, okay, or directory path traversal. So what we know here is that we can call other files, okay, and read them. Now, LFI is a quite important vulnerability, but it's not enough to grant us remote code execution. It's not enough to grant us a shell on the machine. So what we should be aware of when we find local file inclusion is try to find files with interesting information, right? Maybe passwords or something else. So right now we have confirmed this web vulnerability. Now we have to find how we should leverage it. Now, if you remember, and if you're familiar with XAMPP, you already know it. Yeah, I'm sorry. So XAMPP here consists of a database in Apache and PHP. So if we combine that with this hint here that this guy here tried to do database connection, then we could probably find something interesting in that file that causes the database connection. Okay, so let's try and Google the XAMPP database connection. Okay, and here if we do some digging, okay, we can see that we can connect PHP to MySQL using XAMPP by creating this PHP script. Okay, so if we create that script and place it somewhere inside the directory of the application that we are testing, we have to put the server name, which is usually localhost because it's where we test our solutions. We can place the username and the password right here plus the database name. So this nice script is how we can connect PHP to MySQL. There is an alternative as well, but what's interesting here is that we get a username and a password right here. Okay, and here it says that we should save the script with a PHP extension. Okay, now the name is not necessarily a specific one, it's not a strict one. Okay, we don't need to say db connect or database connect.php. It has to end in a PHP. It has to be a PHP file, but we can name it however we want. But there is definitely something like this if we want to connect the database. Okay, so we have to find the name of it and exploit the local file inclusion. I'm going to pause the video and I will continue soon. Okay, so right now let's try and use the same search, but now we're going to search for extensions of PHP files. We get the index.php. Okay, so right here we can see some interesting files. Alright, we have the index.php file, which is a valid one because we already know that it exists. But it doesn't find anything else. Okay, so we should probably stop this and try to specifically search in the dev directory, because this is where our website is being developed and tested. So let's see if it does find an interesting file here, a PHP file for example. And indeed it does. Okay, it finds a db.php file. Okay, so if we copy that and go here to dev, okay, let's see. Okay, it says connected successfully, which is very encouraging, because if we go here, we can see that in the script it creates the connection first using the server name, the username, the password and the database name, and then it tries to check the connection and it prints a message. So it says here that if the connection fails, okay, then we get an error, but if it's successfully connected we get this message. Okay, so this means that this here connection is successful. Okay, so we're sure that the file exists here, it runs, and it definitely has a valid password and username inside. So right now we are going to exploit that local file inclusion vulnerability and try to read that file here. Okay, so if I press enter, we can see that it says connected successfully. Now, why does this happen? Well, this happens because it's a PHP script and it gets executed whenever we call it. Okay, so right here the PHP script gets executed and it prints the connected successfully message. So we have local file inclusion, we know the file that has the sensitive credentials, but we can't read it right now because it gets executed as a script. So what we have to do is try to find a way to call this PHP file without allowing it to be executed. Okay, and this happens with PHP wrappers. If we say PHP wrappers no execute, we can see some interesting information here. Okay, we can see how we can call files without allowing them to execute, and we can actually see a very interesting case here in a Medium article that is just like ours. Okay, so we can see how we can exploit a local file inclusion vulnerability using a PHP wrapper. Okay, so right now we have an interesting case study right here. Okay, it probably is a bit more complex than our case, but what is interesting is that we can use this PHP wrapper and try to see if it works. Okay, so let's place it here and see what happens. Okay, cool. This means that PHP wrapper has worked. So what it actually does here is that it actually converts this PHP script to base 64 string and encodes it to a base 64 string, and then it outputs the result to our screen. So if we copy this and go to CyberChef, then we can base 64 decode the string and get our super interesting PHP script, okay, with the password and the username. So right now here we have this password and we also have the username. Now we go to our Nmap results. What's very interesting here is that except the 80 port right here, we also have the 3306 port exposed. Okay, so this port exposes the MySQL right here. And since we have a password and a username, we could really, try to remotely connect to that database in order to, see if we can find some interesting information in there. So let's clear our screen and let's try to connect to that host that hosts the exam solution. And let's try to also paste the password here. Okay, we have connected to the remote database. So let's see databases. I have some nice databases here. Let's use the test database. No tables here. Okay, let's check the MySQL database. Here we get lots of tables, but let's try and see the users. It's user. Okay, so we have some hashes in here. Let's see the databases again. Let's explore a bit our databases we have, and the news database has something interesting here. Okay, so if we go here, we can see some very interesting things. Okay, so we have really a trove of treasure right here, because we can get a lot of information from this one. So we have a first and the last name, but we also have the short handle. Okay, this seriously look like Active Directory naming conventions. Okay, so we probably know that Robert Smith is R. Smith in this Active Directory installation in hybrid.pl. So let's go and check them out, but we should also check out if these passwords can give us something, if they're valid hashes. Okay, let's copy one of them, and let's use hash identifier. Okay, so possible hashes, it's an MD5 hash. We could probably try and crack it. It's domain cache credentials, not that possible. So let's go to crack station and see if we can get something out of those hashes. Okay, let's copy them one by one. There are just 3, so we can do it by hand. Let's see if we can crack any of these. Okay, we have cracked something, and it's a nice password. I hate Eric. Eric was the guy that probably the password owner called for help. Let's see who this guy is who has some beef with Eric. Oh, it's Robert. So Robert hates Eric. That's some interesting information from the company. Probably Eric did not help him to correctly set up the database. But what we can also do is try and create a domain users file. And place the usernames we found in there. Okay. And see if they're valid usernames. So how can we check that? There are various ways to check that. But currently we're going to use a tool named Kerbrute. Okay. So let's try and use Kerbrute. It has various commands related to attacking Kerberos. We can brute force users, we can password spray, we can enumerate users, which is the one we're going to use here. So let's go and enumerate users. Let's see what we need here. We need the DC string, we need the domain, and a username word list. So let's go right here and say that the DC IP is this. We have to also define the domain, which we can see here is lab.trusted.vl. Okay, and we have to specify our username word list. Okay, Kerbrute is really fast. It also has Windows binary if you want to use it, but mind that it does not work well under proxy chains. So if you're trying to pivot, don't try to use Kerbrute, it won't work. But in our case here, we have found that all three usernames are valid for the lab.trusted.vl domain, which is probably the child domain here, and the other one should be the parent domain, because we saw that it's trusted.vl. So we have three valid usernames, and since we have a password here for Eric, let's try to see if this is a valid set of credentials. And for this, we're going to use crackmap exec. Let's specify our IP address here. It's our Smith. I hate Eric too. Okay, so he's not probably the only guy that hates Eric. Okay, so we have a valid username right here. Okay, we have a valid username with a valid password. So right now we have actually breached this Active Directory domain because we have acquired a valid set of credentials. We exploited a web application vulnerability, a local file inclusion vulnerability to gain access to a database password, a set of credentials for a database, then we exploited that database in order to find some other sensitive information that included domain usernames and passwords. So this is the end of the external phase, and right now we should move to the exploitation of the Active Directory installation of lab.trusted.pl. So our goal should be to gain domain admin rights to this domain, or right to the child domain, so that then we could escalate our privileges to the parent domain. So I'm going to stop this video here, and we are going to move to the exploitation of the Active Directory in the next video.